This week on Mysteriously Disappeared, we look at the case of Glenn Miller, who is second only to Amelia Earhart as the most famous missing person in aviation history. His fame in life as a hit-making big band leader behind swing classics like In the Mood is only matched by the mysterious nature of his disappearance more than 74 years ago during a wartime flight from England to Paris. Let's take a look at the facts and theories surrounding the disappearance of Glenn Miller. Miller was born in Iowa, but spent the latter part of his boyhood in Fort Morgan on Colorado's Eastern Plains. There, he played high school football and honed his skills on the trombone. He briefly attended the University of Colorado Boulder before dropping out to pursue his music career. In the 1930s, Miller experienced widespread fame with his hits Tuxedo Junction and Chattanooga Choo Choo. Even though Miller was in his late 30s and unlikely to have been drafted for World War II, the bandleader joined the Army. It's widely thought that Miller may have had a hard time keeping young musicians in the band because of the draft. He also participated in counter-propaganda campaigns against the Nazis. Moreover, in some recordings, Miller speaks German phonetically, pronouncing words for a German audience.
Oh, Stardust is Sternschnupp.
Jawohl, und Sternschnupp ist Stardust. Und zwar gespielt vom amerikanischen Orchester der alliierten Expeditionsstreitkräfte Glenn Miller.
Sehr gut.
Such broadcasts, combined with Miller's work alongside British actor David Niven, emboldened theorists to assert that Miller had been a spy. Miller, for his part, was a VIP. He was supposed to stick to the military's regularly scheduled passenger transports and keep the brass informed of his whereabouts. During his time in the military, notoriously bad English weather had grounded several scheduled flights, and Miller was in a hurry to get to Paris. Colonel Norman Bassell, a sort of fixer for Miller, had a plane and a pilot, John Stuart Morgan, and was also in a hurry to get to France. So, he offered Miller a ride. Some believe that Colonel Bassell had made arrangements for gigs, hotels, and so on. He might have pressured Morgan, the pilot, to take off regardless of the danger. No one knows if he threatened Morgan or promised him some goodies in Paris, but neither was above Bassell, according to those who knew him. On the day he went missing, December 15, 1944, Miller, an Army major, is believed to have boarded a UC-64A Norseman in Bedfordshire, England, as a passenger at about 1:45 p.m. The plane was bound for France, where Miller was planning a performance for Allied troops. On December 18th, Glenn Miller failed to meet his orchestra in Paris for the scheduled rehearsal time. The musicians weren't too concerned. After all, it was winter and it was wartime, so there were a lot of variables that could have delayed the bandleader. A full 9 days passed before Miller was officially reported missing. An investigation failed to prove that Miller's plane made it to France. The news broke most places on Christmas Day, 1944. Crammed onto the front page amid the blaring war headlines, Glenn Miller was missing. No confirmed wreckage or bodies were ever found, so very little information is available to tell us more about what happened. Let's look at some of the theories in the mysterious disappearance of Glenn Miller. Number 1. Bad weather. The official explanation is the most obvious. Miller and the crew fell victim to bad weather. Flights from Twinwood Farm, the British airfield where Miller departed, had been grounded for several days due to fog, and the cloud ceiling had fallen to 1,500 feet on the day in question. Conditions in Paris were just as poor, with local French air controllers formally denying Morgan's request to undertake the flight. Commanding Officer Bassell ordered Morgan to take the trip anyway, so that Miller could meet up with the rest of his band and perform a concert for the troops. Unfortunately, the haze was bad enough to prompt the notoriously plane-phobic Miller to quip, "Where the hell are the parachutes?" Bassell, according to legend, replied, "What's the matter with you, Miller? Do you want to live forever?" The cloud ceiling was dropping. The temperature was at freezing. The engine ices up and all of a sudden, as they're flying along more than halfway across the channel, there's a loud noise, like a bang, like a backfire. The engine stops, the airplane turns nose down, and in 8 seconds, it's in the water. That's exactly what the United States Army Air Force concluded 3 weeks after the accident. Number 2. Friendly fire. A British airman, Fred Shaw, claimed that Miller's plane was downed by friendly fire. Shaw was part of a fleet of 138 British Lancaster planes en route to Germany that day for a planned bombing raid, but their mission was aborted due to poor weather. Landing an aircraft laden with live explosives was deemed prohibitively risky, so the flights were ordered to a 10-mile circle of the English Channel to safely jettison their collective 100,000 bomb payload. I'd never seen bombs exploding from a plane before, Shaw recalled. I put my head in a little observation blister where I could look vertically down. There, sure enough, 4,000-pound cookies were exploding, and I could see the blast waves radiating outward. Then, as I was watching, the bomb aimer said, "There's a kite down there." I looked down and saw a small, tiny, high-wing monoplane. I saw him flip over to port. He looked like he was going into a spin. He dived in and splashed. Then he disappeared under the wing. After viewing the Glenn Miller biopic a decade later, Shaw felt compelled to check his logbook to see if the date of the bomb dump corresponded to the day Miller went missing. It did, down to the hour. Shaw's flight captain, Victor Gregory, also recalled that Shaw and 2 others on the flight had reported a downed plane over the intercom. Number 3. Was Miller captured by the Germans? Some people claim that Glenn Miller was an orchestra leader by day and a spy by night. They believe he was working for the United States government and using his position as a famous and well-respected entertainer to glean information about the German war machine. In addition, some had expounded on this story, stating Miller was acting as a diplomat of the United States, embarking on a highly classified liaison with the Germans to discuss a peace agreement before being captured and killed. No evidence has ever been found to connect the Germans to Miller's disappearance or link Miller to espionage activities. Dr. James B. Conant, former U.S. ambassador to West Germany, offered a rather lukewarm endorsement of the theory. Miller had enterprise and a capacity to get things done. Again, I doubt anyone could dispute this, but it seems to go hand in hand with a violently overheated imagination. One account of what happened has Miller's flight landing in occupied Paris and then carrying on to Germany. There, Miller, acting on instructions from Eisenhower, apparently made contact with a group of dissident German generals, including Erwin Rommel and Gerd von Rundstedt. His mission was nothing less than to try to broker a deal with the dissident generals, encouraging them to topple Hitler and thus bring the war to an end. And that's not all. Miller was also authorized to offer sanctuary to several German rocket scientists, including Werner von Braun, inventor of the V-2 rocket, who later became the father of the U.S. space program. At this point, the curious may scratch his or her head and ask, but why on earth would Eisenhower pick one of the most readily recognizable men in the world to undertake such a top-secret mission? The answer lies in Miller's German ancestry. Miller, most claim, spoke fluent German and had come to England to make a series of radio programs to be transmitted to Germany. Miller played some of his most popular numbers in these broadcasts, calling upon the Germans to lay down their weapons and surrender. Number 4. Cancer. Perhaps even stranger, Miller's brother and fellow musician Herb reportedly claimed in 1985 that Miller had died in a different kind of bed. Herb reportedly claimed in 1985 that Miller died in a hospital bed. My own theory was that he never even left England but died somewhere of cancer, Herb allegedly told the Weekly World News. I have never believed in the story that my brother died in a plane crash. The accident, he claimed, was concocted to provide the swing star of a hero's death rather than one in a lousy bed. In Herb's version of events, Miller, a heavy smoker, allegedly wrote to him in the summer of 1944, complaining of poor health. I am totally emaciated, although I am eating enough, he reportedly said. I have trouble breathing. I think I am very ill. There is circumstantial evidence that Miller was indeed unwell during this period. Don Hayes later admitted that Miller had lost a great deal of weight, and his British radio director recalls him saying, "You know, George, I have an awful feeling you guys are going to go home without me." Herb died in 1987 before he could clear up some of the holes in his story. This case had a lot of twists and some pretty hard to believe turns because a body was never found. What do you believe happened to Glenn Miller? Please let us know in the comments. When we started with this one, we looked at the simplest and most realistic theory, bad weather. We then slipped into more of the offbeat theories, such as being a spy. There's a lot of information about Glenn Miller. If you would like to check it out, I will leave links to some pretty interesting books in the description. What do you think happened to Glenn Miller? Please leave your theories in the comments. Also, let us know who you'd like us to investigate in future episodes of Mysteriously Disappeared. Finally, don't forget to like the video, click the notification button, and subscribe so that you never miss an update about who mysteriously disappeared.